Alright, welcome back to another episode of Dave Makes Food. I recently watched a video on how to make a perfect roast pork belly with crispy skin and really wanted to give it a try. And you might be thinking, wait a second, that's clearly not a pork belly, Mr. Dave Makes Food. Well, let's just start with the price. Pork belly has joined my laundry list of meats that are no longer worth their cost. What was $3 to $4 a pound a couple years ago is now $8 to $10, and you're basically paying for all fat. It's even $5 per pound at the cheapest store in Chinatown. So, as I do now on a weekly basis, I consulted the flyers, and it looks like pork shoulders on sale for $1.49 per pound. Now, most people don't know what to do with this besides pulled pork or a ham, but it also makes a very good roast. Some quick math shows us that for every 1 pound of pork belly, you could buy 6.65 pounds of pork shoulder at this price. And while pork belly is delicious, it is certainly not almost 7 times more delicious than shoulder meat. So I bought about 10 pounds, and the only real negative here is that I don't drive and I refuse to pay $3.50 for the bus, because that's over 2 pounds more pork shoulder I could have bought. Anyways, back to our pork shoulder. We're going to cut a line parallel to the skin about 1.5 inches away. And with literally one cut, we have something that resembles a center cut pork belly for 15% of the cost, and to be perfectly honest, I actually enjoyed this better. Pork belly usually has about a 2-to-1 fat to meat ratio, and I don't eat all the fat, whereas this was a 2-to-1 meat to fat ratio. The rest can be cut for stir fries, stews, pork chops, ground pork, the list goes on. Make sure to watch my future videos for some ideas. The next step will be to boil a pot of water, take it off the heat, and drop the pork in. Cover it back up and let it sit for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, transfer it to an ice bath. Once chilled, we're going to scrape the skin bare with a knife, removing all debris. Then dry it off as best you can with paper towels. The reason we cooked it a little was to soften up the skin so we can poke lots of tiny holes in it. I'm using 4 toothpicks to pierce the skin. We don't want to go into the meat, just barely through the skin, and this is pretty easy using toothpicks. I tried to cover the whole skin with tiny holes twice over. Next we're going to cover the skin in a layer of salt for 20 minutes and let it sit. Try to get it only on the skin and then massage it in a little bit. In the meantime, we'll prepare our 5-spice powder consisting of cinnamon, star anise, cloves, Szechuan peppercorns, and fennel seed. Grind it finely in your spice grinder, and then we're going to add some salt and sugar. Give it a good mix and taste for seasoning. Next we're going to wipe and scrape off all the remaining salt. The salt was only used to draw out the moisture from the skin, it won't have an effect on the seasoning. And then cut halfway through the pork lengthwise, making 1-inch strips. These will help us pack in our seasoning as well as make it easier to cut later. Make sure not to cut through to the fat. And then just start rubbing our 5-spice mixture into the pork. Make sure it gets on all the sides except the skin. But if you get some on, just wipe it off, and then we're going to brush on a thin layer of white vinegar. This will help dry out the skin further. Now we move it to the fridge, uncovered overnight.
The next day.
Alright, I'm going to be honest, according to the recipe I followed, at this point the skin was supposed to be puffed up and beautiful. I could tell the skin would be crunchy and delicious, but not the light and airy texture I intended on making. But not a big deal, I just put some oil into a pan, turned it to high, and put it in skin side down, and immediately I could hear the pops of the skin that I was looking for. Only took about 3 minutes to get the perfect light and airy skin texture I wanted. Now that was the sound of perfection that I was looking for. I know it looks a little dark here, but that's just from the large amount of 5-spice dry rub that we put on. Anyone that's cooked a pork roast should know that an hour in the oven is certainly not long enough to burn it. As you can see, the meat is still incredibly moist and the skin is puffed up and crispy like a chicharron. To be honest with you, this was the best crispy roast pork I've ever had, but I'm biased because I made the spice blend exactly how I like it and ate it as fresh as possible. It had a perfectly light, airy, and crunchy skin with extremely moist and flavorful meat, spiced with our homemade 5-spice powder, salt, and sugar. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. This one in particular was a lot of fun to make. I spent an embarrassingly long time editing it. If you did, please click like and consider subscribing to my channel. I will be releasing a new video literally every day until I make it on YouTube or run out of resources. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for an exciting recipe that uses the leftover roast pork.